Welcome to syGlass Academy. Today we're talking about the Keyframe Tool to make movies with. The best way to explain how to use the Keyframe Tool would be to take a video of my own and explain to you how it works as I go. So that's what we're going to do. Select the keyframe represented by a video camera in the toolbar. For the Keyframe Tool, instead of using our actual cut plane, we have another tool built in that works similarly. So the first video I want to take of this snake embryo is something that would look like I'm slicing into it with my cut plane tool. So this is what your keyframe tool will look like. You're going to use the trigger on the back of your controller to drop keyframes and cuts. So if you press the trigger and drop our first keyframe, what you see is what is going to be captured. It's similar to using the camera tool in syGlass. So this is your viewpoint. That's essentially like setting up the camera to take your video. If we look up here, there's a checkbox that says Edit Cuts. Click that, or you can use your radio menu, and it's the bottom button that says Turn on Cut Mode. So both of these will bring up your cutting tool. And just like we dropped our keyframe, we're just going to pull the trigger and drop a cut. I want my cut to begin at the front of this data set, so I'm going to put it pretty close right here. At the top of your tool settings menu for the keyframe, there's a timeline. You can adjust the size of the timeline with the timeline zoom level. What's important with the timeline is it represents the beginning and end of your video. So we started all of our cuts and keyframes at 0 on the timeline. To actually animate your video, you'll have to move down the timeline to drop extra cuts or keyframes. To move down the timeline, you can scroll the touchpad, or with your radial menu, you can press left and right, which is usually faster. So let's say I want to make my second cut at 6.5 seconds. So I'm just going to come down here after I've moved on the timeline and drop my second cut. So you can see how this is going to look just by scrolling with your thumb on the touchpad. It'll go back through the timeline and kind of show you what's going on if you want to see it frame by frame. Or you can press play in your menu and it'll give you a preview of what the video will look like. So I like that, but I want the end of the video to have a slight pause after the last cut instead of just jumping right back to the beginning. Go back to your timeline, and there's 2 arrows that are left and right. These arrows will jump to certain places on the timeline. If you have Edit Cuts selected, it'll jump between cuts. And if you have Edit Cuts unselected, it'll jump between the keyframes. So I'm going to jump back to my last cut. And then at the bottom of the tool settings menu, I'm going to put a couple seconds in the slider that says Frame Hold Time. So you can choose to hold your video up to 5 seconds after animation is complete. I'm going to put just a second after mine, and then I'm going to play it just one more time to see if I like how the video turned out. So I want to record the video and have it saved to my computer now. All you have to do is select the red record button next to the play button, and it'll automatically save to your files on your computer. I can delete one frame at a time, or you can delete all of the frames at once by holding down on the button that says Delete All Frames until the loading bar is complete. So this time, let's try to animate the data instead of just cut through it. Make sure you're all the way back at the beginning of the timeline and make sure that the timeline is paused while you're making keyframes. So for the beginning of this video, I want the snake to be facing me and turn to the back for the end. So for the first keyframe, I'll just have him facing me, and I'll drop a keyframe like I did before. This time I'm going to scroll on my timeline and drop another keyframe instead of a cut. I don't want the camera view to move too much, I just want my snake to move. So I'm going to drop my second keyframe, maybe a little zoomed in, but right about the same spot as the first one. After you've dropped the second keyframe, now you can move the data to create an animation. So I'm going to spin mine around and see how that looks. I like it so far, but I'd like the snake to twist around a little more, and I want the length of the video to be a little bit longer. So first I'm going to pause the timeline and jump to my second keyframe. And now that I'm on the second keyframe, I can move the snake to where I want it to be. I'm using the switch tools button on the side of my controller to quickly switch back and forth. So I've moved the snake, but I also want this to be longer than 4 seconds, and I don't want it to just pause at the end of the video. So what I'm going to do is jump to the keyframe using my arrows to the one I want to change, and then click the checkbox that says move. Check the move box and scroll with the touchpad. I want this video to be 6 seconds long instead of 4, and I want a little bit of time at the end. So let's play it again. Nice, looks good. So I can record that using the red record button and save it to my computer. I'm going to show you one more version of how to make a keyframe video. With this one, let's make our first keyframe and one cut. And then scroll on the timeline, and I'm going to place my second keyframe just a little bit farther back than the first one. Now that I've dropped the second keyframe, I'm going to pull my data set up through that cut mark that I dropped. When I press play, it's going to cut into my data and grow closer to me. And we can see it here. The last button on your radio menu reads Hide Frames. You can toggle the frames on and off using that. If you want to have a really crisp, high quality video, you can mess with the settings in the main menu. You should know that if you do turn up these options, it will take far longer to render the videos. There's also an option at the bottom that says Capture Stereo VR Keyframes. This allows you to record stereoscopic VR video, like the one displayed here. Another option is to check on and off the Show Rooms button, and that's just preference if you want the room to be in your video or if you just want a black background. And the last option is to enable the bounding box around your project. Thanks for watching. If you still have more questions, please contact us at info@syglass.io. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated with all the tools and features of syGlass. Thank you so much.